off, thanks so much for taking some time to connect.
Yeah,
I
no problem.
saw, I think it was like on Aaron, which is Stay's thing that like I follow you, but then he like posted about it. And I was like, oh, I would love to connect, and I always love networking. I think I'm in the stage of like, all right, I'm done learning. If I keep learning, I'm just going to stay in like this analysis paralysis. And
Yeah.
I guess my goal for this conversation is to really understand like what did you do in your first year or first months, and what would you do differently, and what advice would you give?
I mean, my background, so I had a W-2 job for probably 5 or 6 years after college. I worked in oil and gas. And then um honestly, I just got to the point where I hated it. Like I hated everything about it. So I would what I did, I wouldn't recommend most people do because I like thought I had a plan and just kind of quit. Not the greatest idea. But was able to, kind of make it work. So um and now have a company and we buy 10-ish houses a month. We flip, we wholesale, we have rentals, all that good stuff. So that's kind of like where I was, where we are now.
Yeah.
So when I first started though, like dude, I didn't have a freaking clue. I thought I had a plan. I was an agent for a while and then eventually kind of like got into this like, I mean, our thing is buying, off market direct to seller houses.
Hmm.
Just kind of a niche thing. And it's honestly, it's a marketing business more than anything. And then, we're opportunistic about, do we flip? Do we keep rentals? What do we do with the property once we buy it? But like the bulk of the business is like working with sellers, buying houses, and then, probably 25% of that is like fixing them, selling them, doing kind of the back end stuff. Um, but with that being said, I mean, it really just depends on what you want to do. I think there's a lot of, obviously I think anything with real estate's a good option, but I think people also, even if you're like, cool, I want to buy a rental every few years, in 10 years or, whatever, 20 years, you're going to be in a lot better shape regardless of like, even if you paid full retail for all of these and you bought a house every few years, like there's not really any bad way to go about it. So I think it just depends on what you want. If it's, building long-term wealth and keeping your W-2 and you like what you do, that's one thing. If it's, hey, what I want to do this full time, what does that look like? Or so I think it's kind of figuring out what direction you want to go. I don't think any of them are necessarily good or bad options. It's just, what do you want to do? So before I quit my job, I had kind of turned my primary into an Airbnb, like moved in with a friend to cut expenses, and then, kind of just slowly, bought a few rentals, right? And then in the meantime, kind of figured out the business that we're now in. So that was how I kind of got started and stuff. But yeah, I think it just depends on, kind of what you're looking for and, what that looks like for you.
My goal is to start off doing wholesaling or flipping, and to replace my income so I could just dive in fully.
Gotcha. I mean, honestly, like if I was starting over wholesaling, like
Yeah.
an expensive market I would like expensive markets because I mean it's all the same. It's just bigger fees, right? Like
Hmm.
no one's paying $100,000 fee on $100,000 house, but they will on $1 million house. So I think all of that looks a little different. I think the barrier to entry is higher, but that's not necessarily bad. So I mean, I honestly like I'm always a big proponent of staying or at least starting in your own backyard just because it, right? Like in San Antonio where I'm at, like someone says a street or a zip code, I know exactly where it's at, right? Same thing, place I grew up or whatever. But I think that's super helpful. The thing that's going to be difficult if you choose to do that in Northern California is your marketing expenses are going to be crazy. Like it's going to be expensive to get deals, numbers are going to look better, but it's more expensive, right? You
Hmm.
go like the middle of America, somewhere in the Midwest, it's going to be cheap to get deals, but you're going to make 5 to 10 grand on a wholesale fee, right? So it all just looks different. And it's just, the thing that I see when people are getting started in more expensive markets, you just have to have deep pockets and kind of commit to it, right? And I think, and the hard thing too is, Honestly, I think it's probably, a lot of people don't build out their relationship side of it because, honestly, the most useful thing you could do if you're getting started there is start connecting with people that are like legitimate buyers and figuring out what they want. Because, you know, the difference in like having someone say, "Hey, I'll pay $1 million for this," and you're like, "Cool, all I have to do is get it for less," is a lot
Mhm.
different than you going out, having not done it, and being like, "Is it worth 1 million, or is it worth, would this sell for 1 million, or would it sell for 900?" And that's a big margin, So, um, if I was going to start somewhere like that, I would just start connecting with people there, kind of figure out what they're looking for, and then, if you're getting into that, then, of course, we can talk marketing and what you can do to make the phone ring or whatever that looks like. But um, honestly, I look at some markets like that and I'm like, I don't know. Like I know a dude in Southern California that like flips and wholesales, and he's not doing a deal unless he makes over 6 figures on it, but he does, 10 deals a year or something, So I'm
Mhm.
like that. I'll look at and I'm like that kind of seems more fun than doing more volume with lower splits almost. But it all just looks a little different in different places.
I guess in the position that you're at, kind of leading and taking on what you just mentioned, what kind of like if someone were to come to you that's brand new and you're a buyer, what what would make you be like, oh, this person's one serious about like them starting, and two, like that I do want to share my criteria or buy box with them.
Yeah, so and I think this is where a lot of people get things wrong because like a lot of people don't want to actually do the work. So, I have people like, oh, I want to sell you a deal, and they'll send me something. And I'm like, it's freaking like it's listed on the MLS. Like, you don't want to do the work to like actually figure it out. But if someone came to me and it's like, hey, like, I'm gonna go find a deal, like, will you just like if I send you pictures, will you tell me what you pay for it? Like all day I'll do
Mm,
that, right? Like, but at the same time, like I've done that for people before, and then they go like sell it to someone else who will pay like 5 grand more. And I'm like, well, that's not worth my time. But I think
yeah.
it's like a lot of people just don't see the long game of that, of like, man, if you're like out there hustling and trying to get deals and I'll like, you'll bring me something and just say, hey, like what we pay for it. Like, and it's finding the right people too. Cause like the way we operate, like, um, actually a dude we just hired wholesaled us a deal, a few months ago. And like, I walked it with him. He's like, what would you pay for it? I'm like, 75 grand. And then he's like, cool. Well, I just locked up for 45. I'm like, perfect. Like, and
Mm,
he's like, this will be great for my, like me and my wife. Like, that's a lot of money. And I'm like, dude, that's awesome. Like, I'm going to make money at 75. I don't care if you make 5 grand or 50 grand. Right. So I think it's connecting with people that are like legit buyers and don't like, they're not going to care what you make on it. They see the value you bring, but also, and then
yeah.
it's like, because that person, like, dude, it's so hard. Like when you are first starting to like, I don't know what, like, you don't know what repairs cost. You don't know any of these things. Like the only reason I know it because we flip a lot of houses, but even whenever, because I started off like working with a broker and then did like 2 or 3 deals there. And then
Mm,
eventually like was like, cool, I can probably do this on my own. But even when I broke off, like the first few deals, like I was just like, I would buy them, but I was just nervous. I'm like, I think it's a deal, but like, I don't know. So, and I
mm,
think that's really hard. I think that part is hard in like a Northern California market or Sacramento, wherever you are, because
mhm.
the margin for error can be so like crazy, right? Like on, maybe you're off by a lot or maybe you're not. But so I think it's, figuring out who those like real players are in your market and like,
Yeah.
hey, what are you looking for? And then it's like, cool, I'll go find it and bring it to you. Um, but it's, if anyone that would do that in my market, like I would do that all day. And it's like, cool, well, let's do X number of deals and I'll help you along the way or help you calculate repairs or, whatever to help you grow. And like, if you grow out of selling to me, great. But as long as, someone's actually doing that, that brings value.
Mhm.
But a lot of people just don't do that. It's like, hey, like I saw this other wholesaler sending this deal out. Do you want it? I'm like, no, you know, but I mean, I think if you are actually like find someone you know and trust and, hey, I want to bring you deals, like, and do it, like, dude, everyone's gonna love that, as long as you're like straightforward and honest with people about it.
Yeah, I think I've never thought of it that way. I thought that I've had the idea of kind of doing a reverse and going to the person and be like, what would you buy? Where would you buy? How would you buy
Yeah.
it? And like the thought of be like, hey, if can I send you pictures? Like that's never been the thought. That's and I felt like I needed to have all my ducks in a row before I bring them some sort of information to make it worth their while. But that is actually very helpful.
No, I mean, dude, I think it's just an honesty, like just be straightforward with people. Like, hey, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what this is worth. Like I'm learning, right? Like you don't, and I think that's the thing too. People are like, oh, I just like I don't want to admit that I don't know everything. And I think that's where people really like, limit themselves. Like I've had, a wholesaler reach out to me and like, oh, well, I want to sell it for this and I need a $20,000 wholesale fee. And I'm like, it's not worth that. And they're like, well, the average wholesale fee is $20,000. I was like, no, the wholesale fee is directly correlated to the amount of value you're providing. It's
mhm,
not like this is a freaking minimum wage. It's like you get a good deal, you make more. So,
yeah.
but I think that like you just have to have that level of like, hey, I'm gonna be honest and dude, I'm like completely ignorant about this right now, but I want to learn. And like, can I send you pictures and you just tell me what you pay for it? Like, or can you walk the house with me and just tell me what you pay for it? And if I get it for less, are you fine with me assigning it to you or paying me a fee or whatever? And I mean,
Mhm.
9 out of 10 people that are like legit investors are gonna like say yes to that every time.
I've been kind of like in my head of like I need to have it all figured out and bring it to them all
Yeah, I mean, I
packaged
think
and ready.
it's finding the right people, but like on the other side of that, there's so much like bullshit out there. Like there's so many people like teaching bad strategies and like it's so like get rich quick that like I get why people would be like, oh, it's just another like yeah, like young guy who wants to like do this and he's gonna like
Mhm.
try to lock up like MLS deals that don't have any like meat on the bone. Like, because there's so many people teaching bad stuff that it's like, no, the skill's in the marketing and getting the deal, and getting them like direct to seller, right? So I
Mhm.
think if you learn that, you can learn, hey, how do I price this? How do I calculate repairs? What are things to look out for that are unique to this market? Or,
Mhm.
what does that look like? And real players are gonna want to work with you. If you're like, hey, I'm gonna not know what I'm doing and try to shop this to like 10,000 people, like that would for me very quickly be like, don't waste my time.
Yeah,
Like,
totally.
but like if someone's gonna come to me and help, like want to help and want to learn and like have some level of like loyalty, like cool, like I'll help you all day. So I think it's just the attitude around how you approach that. But like, man, don't be afraid to be like, I'm learning, I'm gonna figure this out. Like, I hope you can help me get there, right? I
Hmm.
mean, that's what I think at least.
That's so good. I guess that leads me to my last question because I know our time is coming
Dude,
close
you're
to an
good.
end. Marketing with more time and effort to put in, what kind of channels would you recommend doing if you had more opportunity to put more work in instead of more money in?
Yeah, that's a good question. So uh those are all the things I don't like doing. But so I think a few things. So building relationships with agents, like like agents are going to have off market pocket listings, like anything you can do to, hey, if you ever come across something that maybe is too dirty or like a hoarder house or something like that. Like I know a dude in San Antonio that all he does is cold call agents. All he does is
Mm,
buy like off market, like pocket listings. I think that's good. I think right now, as the market's slowing, like, anything that's been sitting on the market like 120 plus days or 90 plus days, whatever that looks like in your market. A list that I like that's, kind of low hanging fruit is if you pull any sort of like failed MLS. which
Mm.
like any like prop stream, any of those list providers are going to have that. So, someone who listed their house that didn't sell. Um, I like that a lot. I'm big on like mail and just kind of like expensive marketing channels, but those are the things that I would limited budget. And then there's a group, there's a software called REI Sift, and I don't even have heard of it. I don't use it. But they kind of have like all these like, courses, and they're all about like, like stacking different motivations, like, oh, there's
Mm.
liens, it's behind on taxes, and they're honestly like almost like private investigator type, like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, this person died, I got to sort all these details out. But it's more work, but they can be really good deals. So because we have deals like that that are like have messy title issues, and it's like we have one now that has 19 heirs, and
Oh gosh.
if we can sort it out, we're going to make like $40,000 on it. But we've been working on it for a year, and we've found 18 of the 19 heirs. So anything you can, some of that stuff that's like more work, more like time intensive, more like, hey, I got to research this person. Hey, I got to try to track down this person. Like, I mean, I've like tried to find people on Facebook before. I've like, there's like stuff like that. You can, with more time and less money, there's different ways to do that. But those are, I guess, some ideas that I would have of, hey, if I had all the time in the world, like what would I do?
Yeah.
Sort of thing. I had a dude locally hit me up, and it's like it was a house in his neighborhood, and he's like, oh, this old lady died, and he's like, can you help me find heirs? So if I'm like, I don't know, sure. Like, so it can be a little more investigative like that, of like, okay, I'm gonna have to like I'm pretty good at like stalking people on the internet. Like I can find people. I don't like telling people that all the time, but it's one of those things that like, you can figure that stuff out. And like we've had
Mm-hmm.
people that are like, I mean, you'll find people that don't know they own stuff. Like they don't know they inherited stuff.
Wow.
Or like, there's some of that where you're like, um, I had this house that never panned out, but like both her parents died, and they had sold this house to someone owner finance, and the person was trying to sell it to us, but they couldn't get a payoff, and we couldn't find the people to get the payoff. So I'm like reaching out to her. I'm like, I know this sounds scammy, but like bear with me. And then I like hopped on a call, and she's like yelling at me and all this stuff. And I'm like, listen, like I can probably get you $50,000 if you work with me, because like your parents own this mortgage, and like we need to pay you off to buy it.
Mm.
So like if you work with us, but it's stuff like that,
Yeah.
that's some of those people like, oh, I didn't know I inherited this, or I didn't know, this was going on. So it just becomes a little more like, hey, I'm a private investigator and figuring out issues and stuff, but you get
Mm-hmm.
paid for solving problems.
Yeah, no, that's really good. Yeah, I definitely will look into REI Sift and look at the
Yeah, as far as
MLS
the software, I don't
listings.
like do anything with it. And I mean,
Mm.
they have videos on like like tactically and strategically, like how to target these certain types of properties that have, like, oh, it's vacant, we can't find anyone, or like all that stuff. So I think they have
Mm-hmm.
good information, and that their whole community is kind of built around that, where like those deals are like nice every now and then. But if that's all you're doing, like I would go crazy, just because
Mm.
like I can do a messy one every now and then, but I don't want like all of them that way, if that makes sense. But when you're just starting out, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I think it can be a really good thing to do.
Yeah, no, I think that will also give me just a lot of know-how with messy title reports because
Yeah,
I'm trying to dive into like every aspect of it. And again, I don't want to get stuck on learning. I want to dive in.
yeah,
Um, no, Aaron, I super appreciate it.
yeah. No problem, dude. And if, dude, as you're getting into this stuff, or if you have questions, like hit me up anytime. Glad to help however I can.